Coming up on this Thursday edition of Daybreak, Korea's ruling party and the families of the victims of the Sewol-ho ferry disaster failed to narrow their differences during their second round of talks on the details of a special bill for investigating the sinking. The multi-billion-dollar merger between Korea's #2 search engine firm Daum Communications and the nation's largest mobile messenger firm Kakao has been approved. Plus, the United Nations accuses the Syrian government and Islamic State militants of committing mass atrocities in Syria. Daybreak begins now.
Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Thursday, August 28th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. We begin with another failed round of talks between Korea's ruling party and the families of the victims of April's ferry disaster over a special bill that's supposed to investigate the causes of the sinking. The two sides have promised to meet again in another attempt to hash out their very deep differences. But how many more meetings is it going to take? Chae Yu-sun starts us off.
Tensions had certainly waned compared to their first meeting 2 days earlier.
Tell us anything you'd like. We will faithfully listen.
Compensation is not very important to all the families. What's truly important is one thing, and that is finding the truth behind the accident.
But after 3 long hours of talks on Wednesday, the ruling party and the families of victims from April's ferry disaster only managed to reconfirm their differences over a contested bill on probing the accident. The families reiterated their demand for a group of legal experts that they select have authority to investigate and indict. The Saenuri party, on the other hand, said it would violate the judicial system. After talks failed, the ruling party floor leader Lee Wan-gu said he feels mutual understanding is growing. The family representative, however, said no progress was made since the previous meeting and that they will meet again next Monday. Meanwhile, the opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy, whose proposal for a 3-way negotiation with the ruling party and the families was rejected earlier this week, continued rallying at Gwanghwamun Square for a second day.
If the ruling party is thinking about what's best for the people, it must resolve the Sewol-ho ferry bill within this week.
Political discord over the ferry bill has paralyzed parliamentary affairs, delaying passage of major economy and reform-related bills. President Park Geun-hye and the ruling party have urged the opposition to prioritize the pending bills, but as more time passes, the prolonged logjam will likely become a bigger burden for the ruling side. Chae Yu-sun, Arirang News.
Now, American intelligence agencies believe North Korea is developing a submarine capable of launching ballistic missiles. If confirmed, this development will stoke fresh concerns about the missile and nuclear threat posed by the North. Our Shin Se-min has the details.
You're looking at North Korean leader Kim Jong-un sitting atop of a Romeo-class submarine. The photos of Kim surfaced in June when he visited a naval unit of the Korean People's Army and, according to North Korean state media, conducted a drill and instructed the captain on navigation methods. His visit is part of North Korea's efforts to shore up the underwater operation capability of its submarines. And it seems the North is making inroads. U.S.-based media outlet Washington Free Beacon reports that U.S. Defense Intelligence agencies recently detected a previously unseen missile launch tube on a North Korean submarine. North Korea is reportedly developing a ballistic missile submarine that, if confirmed to be true, would significantly raise the threat posed by the nuclear-armed communist state. According to the report, U.S. intelligence shows Pyongyang is developing a submarine capable of launching ballistic missiles. North Korea is also believed to have already obtained submarine-launched ballistic missiles from Russia. Pentagon spokesman Jeffrey Poole refused to comment on the report, saying he was not allowed to discuss matters of national intelligence. However, he did say the U.S. urges Pyongyang to be more transparent with its defense activities for the sake of regional peace. If the report is true and Pyongyang has developed its capability, the U.S. will have to look into strengthening its missile defense systems on the West Coast, as North Korea would be capable of hitting Alaska. U.S. bases in Japan, the Philippines, and Guam would also be well within range of a North Korean strike launch from waters in Asia. 시세민, Arirang News.
And as a follow-up to that story, the South Korean Defense Ministry has rejected that US report, which says North Korea is building a submarine capable of launching ballistic missiles. A ministry official says that to be able to launch a ballistic missile, the submarine would need to weigh at least 3,000 tons. But the largest identified submarine in the North Korean Navy only weighs 1,800 tons. As we just heard there in Semin's report, the US-based web magazine reported that a missile launch tube was observed on a submarine by US intelligence agencies. Now, South Korea's consumer sentiment picked up in the month of August on anticipation of the government's recently announced stimulus measures. It's yet to recover to pre-ferry disaster levels, but it appears to be on a steady recovery track. Our Hwang Jie has this report.
The Korean government's efforts to shore up economic sentiment are bearing fruit. The Bank of Korea says the consumer sentiment index stood at 107 in August, up 2 points from a month earlier. The figure marks a rebound from July, suggesting that Korean consumers might be returning to their spending habits that were dented after April's ferry disaster. The index hovered at around the 108 level in the first 4 months of this year, but dropped to 105 in May following the disaster. The central bank says the improvement was spurred by a widely expected rate cut this month and government stimulus measures that were instituted by Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan's new economic team. While indications are that consumer sentiment is improving, the August figure is still below the level posted before the ferry tragedy.
A new survey we conducted shows that more than half of the firms surveyed expect the negative impact of the ferry tragedy to last through next month. Those who think it will last for more than 2 or 3 months made up more than 30%.
The monthly index is a gauge of the overall economic outlook of consumers, their living conditions, and future spending plans. A reading over 100 means optimists outnumber pessimists. Although the economy is not running in full steam for now, expectations are high that there will be a pickup in private spending, with one of the nation's biggest holidays, Chuseok, right around the corner. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
And Korean workers will be taking an average of 4.3 days off for the upcoming Chuseok holiday, which falls on the second week of September this year. This, according to a survey of about 500 companies by the Korea Employers Federation, which also said the Chuseok bonus this year will come to an average of 932,000 won, or roughly $920. That's about $1 higher than last year. Chuseok, or Korean Thanksgiving as it's sometimes known, is one of Korea's biggest national holidays.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now, the multi-billion-dollar merger between the nation's top messaging app Kakao and Korea's #2 web portal Daum is now officially sealed. Daum Kakao will launch on October 1st. So, what can we expect from this new tech heavyweight? Well, it has plenty to be getting on with here in Korea, but as our Kwon So-ah tells us, the main aim will be cracking the global market.
The deal is sealed. The merger of Daum Communications, Korea's second-largest internet portal, and Kakao Corporation, the nation's #1 mobile messaging service, was approved by all associated shareholders on Wednesday. It comes 3 months after the two companies announced the merger through a stock swap arrangement. Daum Kakao will officially launch on October 1st and is expected to be co-led by Kakao CEO Lee Se-gu and Daum CEO Choi Se-hoon. At the shareholders' meeting Wednesday, Lee said he hoped the new company would not only have a reach in the domestic IT market, but also in the global market. The merger is expected to impact Korea's top search engine provider, Naver, and its messaging service Line, which as of now have a much bigger global user base compared to Kakao's messenger service, Kakao Talk. Daum Kakao says the new company's services will not only be restricted to the online world, but that it will expand into a platform that can be used in everyday life. The market capital of the new company could rise to over 10 trillion won, or nearly $10 billion, as Daum's current value is $2.2 billion and Kakao's is at around $9 billion. Industry watchers therefore expect Daum Kakao to eventually become the most valued company on the tech-heavy Kosdaq stock exchange. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
And there is some more exciting tech news out there, especially if you're a tech entrepreneur watching us now, because Google will debut a new platform for startup companies right here in Seoul next year. The internet giant said it will be called Campus Seoul, and it will represent its first such venue, in fact, in the entire continent of Asia. The community will provide support to entrepreneurs and offer mentorships while providing opportunities for businesses to expand overseas and attract investments. Google says the support comes with absolutely no strings attached. Once it's established, the Google campus in Korea will be the world's third. The first one launched in London back in 2012, followed by another one in Israel later that year. Now, if you live in Korea, you'll probably have noticed how expensive a cup of coffee can be these days. Have something a little bit fancy, something out of the ordinary, and you can pay well over $5 per drink. One chain is doing extremely well here, as it is around the world, and that is Starbucks. They have absolutely no problem attracting customers, despite charging sometimes twice as much for a drink in Seoul as they do in New York City. Our Connie Kim reports.
Look around, and it won't be too hard to find a place to grab a cup of coffee. But none have quite the presence that Starbucks has. Just across the street from where I'm standing is another Starbucks that's quite as busy as this one.
Actually, there are so many in Seoul, 284 Starbucks coffee shops in the capital city. Now that's more than you'll find in New York City, Shanghai, London, or Seattle, where the company was founded. So why are customers finding their way to a Starbucks?
There are many items on the menu and a lot of Starbucks stores. They are easy to find, so that's why I continue coming.
I like the brand image, and the stores are clean compared to other coffee shops.
But enjoying the company's fresh brewed coffee comes with a higher price. Customers are paying a premium for a cup of joe at Starbucks stores in Korea, on average $4.85. That's nearly twice the amount customers pay in the United States. For an Americano, the data shows that Korea ranks 6th on the price list, behind countries like Poland and Greece. As for the expensive markup for the same coffee drinks, Starbucks Korea declined to comment to Arirang News. But according to Korean daily 동아일보, Starbucks Korea says different operating costs and cultural factors are the reasons, and that using numbers may not be the best way to draw comparisons. But do they justify higher prices? Well, perhaps, when compared with other domestic coffee chains in the country, Starbucks prices are on par with those found at domestic coffee chains. It appears that Koreans, generally speaking, are willing to shell out a little extra for a cup of coffee, no matter where it comes from. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following on this Thursday morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by the news centre. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. A new UN report has been released detailing the abuses committed in Syria by the Islamic State and the Syrian government in their fight against each other. It marks the end of a fact-finding mission by the world body conducted between January and July of this year as part of an inquiry into human rights violations in the deteriorating state. The report said Islamic State militants, as part of their campaign of fear, committed mass atrocities in Syria. It said public executions were not rare in rebel-held northern territories, where bodies would be put on display for several days. Children were also being recruited to join in their so-called jihad. The government of Bashar al-Assad is accused of war crimes, including using chemical agents in 8 separate incidents in April and May of this year. The UN said there was clear proof in some instances that civilian gatherings were deliberately targeted. Prison detainees, it said, were subjected to horrific torture and sexual assault. American writer and journalist Peter Theo Curtis, released earlier this week by his captors in Syria, has been reunited with his family in Massachusetts, USA. In a brief statement outside his family's home, he told reporters he was overwhelmed with emotion by the outpour of support shown to him and that he suddenly remembered how good the American people are and what kindness they have in their hearts. The 45-year-old was freed after nearly 2 years of captivity by the al-Nusra Front. He asked for time with his family. Ukrainian Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk has warned Europe that Russia plans to halt gas flows into Europe this winter. Comments were denied by Moscow and its energy minister Alexander Novak. Yatsenyuk's comments came less than 24 hours after Ukraine's President Petro Poroshenko had met his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin and Europe's main energy diplomat. Novak called it a groundless attempt to intentionally mislead European consumers, adding that Russia will put forth maximum efforts to fulfill gas contract obligations to European importers regardless of political issues. Russia halted gas supplies to Ukraine in June over a pricing dispute, but has continued to supply EU countries via Ukraine. And finally, IMF chief Christine Lagarde is being investigated by a French magistrate in relation to a controversial payout while she served as the country's finance minister. She is suspected of simple negligence in a payout to a French business tycoon worth 400 million euros. Lagarde announced that she was questioned for 15 hours at the Court of Justice in Paris on the matter, adding that she has no intention of stepping down from her post at the fund. The IMF managing director has not yet been charged.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off with the Incheon Asian Games, which is just around the corner. And on Wednesday, the officials got together to hold a press conference to discuss some of the events set to take place during the opening and closing ceremonies. With the theme of Asia as one, the opening and closing ceremonies during the 2014 Incheon Asian Games is set to be filled with some of the biggest names in Korean entertainment. Officials predict that the opening and closing ceremonies will haul in the biggest revenue and should be one of the biggest festivals anyone has seen. Meanwhile, the Korean Olympic Committee stated that the largest number of Korean athlete and delegation will be in Incheon this September, with a total of 1,068. And now moving over to the Korean national football team, who is still without a head coach right now, but Lee Young-soo, the head of the technical committee, is optimistic. According to Lee Young-soo, he's currently in talks with 4 to 5 candidates and is at the negotiation stages as well. He stated that although it's highly unlikely that a permanent head coach will be signed by the time the September friendlies take place, he's going to make sure the new head coach will be available by October's friendlies. Now, this comes after the negotiation with Bert Van Marwijk broke down last minute. And moving over to the second leg of the round of 8 AFC Champions League matchup between the two K-League Classic teams, the Pohang Steelers and FC Seoul. Now, both teams drew 0-0 in the first leg, and the second leg took place last night at the Seoul World Cup Stadium. Now, despite both sides trying to be more aggressive in this match, it was a battle of the defense once again, as both sides failed to score in the first 120 minutes of the match. This match ends up going into a penalty shootout, and while FC Seoul converts the first two penalty, Yoo Sang-hoon saves Pohang's first 3 tries, and FC Seoul advances with a 3-0 penalty shootout victory. And now moving on to some Wednesday night's KBO action, the Hanwha Eagles continue their winning ways, beating the NC Dinos 7-3, with the Lotte Giants crushing the Samsung Lions 11-4, and the Tusan Bears continue to struggle as they lose to the LG Twins 5-1. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Kia Tigers take on the Nexen Heroes. Of course, going into the game here, first getting Park Ki-nam deep to left field, and this one is gone, and the Kia Tigers take a 1-0 lead. Several batters later, bases loaded for Kim Joo-hyung. That's a double to right, and that's going to clear the bases, and the Kia Tigers take an early 4-0 lead. Second inning, bases loaded for Moon Woo-ram, and he grounds one to second. One runner scores, and it's now 4-1. Next inning, one man on Yoon Sung-min, and this one deep to left field. 2-run shot, and it's now 4-3. Fifth inning, Lee Tae-keun singles to center here, but an error on the play as Seok Chang scores from second, and we're tied 4-4. Fast forward to the bottom of the 8th inning, and that's Kang Jong-ho, number 36 on the season, and the Nexen Heroes rally to take a 5-4 lead. Now they would add another run in the inning as they hold on to win this one 6-4. And now finishing things off at the U.S. Open, where American Cici Bellis made history after beating Dominika Sewol-ho of Slovakia in the first round. Well, that's because Cici Bellis is just 15 years old, as she becomes the youngest player to win a U.S. Open match since 1996. And the team beat out the 12-seed Sewol-ho in 3 sets, 6-1, 4-6, 6-4, as she hopes to add another victory to her already impressive tournament. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Well, lingering rain clouds are still dropping showers to Jeollado provinces and Jeju Island, and rain in the southern coast regions are likely to let up in the morning hours. But Jeju Island is expected to receive about 30 to 80 millimeters of more showers throughout the day, which could be accompanied by thunder and lightning. But the rest of the regions will have a rain-free day. It will be just like typical late summer-like weather, including here in Seoul. It will get sunnier as the day goes on as well, and the temperatures will rise to warm side. So let's take a closer look at today's temperatures. The morning low here in Seoul is starting out at 20, but the high will jump up to 30 degrees Celsius, while Daegu and Gwangju will hike up to 27 and 26 respectively, and Busan will top out at 25 later in the afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju Island will peak at only 24, and Daejeon and Dokdo should see highs of 27 and 22, while Gyeonggang gets up to 19. Well, please be aware of a big temperature gap between lows and highs, and take good care of yourself to avoid getting sick. Now that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now. Do stay tuned to Arirang TV because Korea Today is coming up in half an hour's time. I'll be back again for our next full newscast. That's coming up at 10 a.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.